Shall we talk about Donald Trump? I know, you, but hear me out. See, during his first term, Angela Merkel became the de facto leader of the free world, and it was predominantly not just because Trump is an idiot, he is, but it was because Trump was so unreliable to his allies, and the allies of America are the people who lead the free world. We can get into the nitty gritty of the bad politics of numerous people and countries, but effectively that's how it's categorized. And Trump just wasn't that. He was an adversary of every single ally of America. During his second term, it is so much worse. See, during his first time, he was surrounded by truly vile people, but some of those people had enough about them to say, Mr. President, you can't do this because the ramifications. Now, he does not have those people there at all. In fact, Trump himself has stated that he thinks his only mistake from the first term was that he had those people to stop him being as truly monstrous as he wants to be. And the thing of it is, the Trump supporters, the MAGA cult, they don't get to say that Trump is fully functioning anymore because the man has boasted about the 3 cognitive tests that he's had. To be clear, you only have one cognitive test if there is a serious concern about your cognitive capabilities. You only have 2 cognitive tests if the first one showed that there are serious concerns with your cognitive capacity and they need to keep an eye on it. And you only have 3 if there is a serious problem and that second test did not go well. Then, of course, we take into consideration the situation in Hormuz and Iran right now. There are reports, credible reports, where people on military vessels are being restrained because the situation is so bad they are trying to throw themselves overboard because of Trump's orders. He has actively renamed the Strait of Hormuz the Strait of America, showing that this man is a dictator. And it always makes me laugh because Americans who would typically lean Republican will always say, and I've done videos on this in the past, but they'll always say, no, we need the Second Amendment in case a tyrannical government takes over. The people need to defend ourselves. That was the whole thing. That's what the founding fathers put forward. But you've got a man who has invaded numerous countries and attacked American citizens, made life objectively worse for American citizens, and they support this. Trump's tariffs have undoubtedly hurt the American people. We have the emphatic evidence to support this. His desperation to blame anyone and everything for his mistakes is a trait that he picked up during childhood and has carried on. After all, this is a man who is so wealthy, he's never actually known failure because daddy was always there to bail him out. This is an action he took into his adult years, where he looks at his numerous bankruptcies and doesn't see them as a failure, he sees them as someone else's failure. And even when that whole fiasco with the coloured dye in the pond, he still didn't take ownership for that because somehow that was vandals, even though it was entirely him. Problem as I see it is that Trump is too stupid to have a grand master plan. And that's not just me not liking an orange rapist. That is the simple fact that the man has had to have 3 cognitive tests. So the man is too stupid to have an overarching evil plan. And I suppose we should be grateful for stupid evil rather than just evil, but the people he surrounded himself with are evil. So where will this end? I've listened to a number of debates with MAGA enthusiasts, the MAGA cultists, the Trump supporters, and whenever you bring up any of the atrocities that he's done, from his own admission when he was on the Howard Stern show that he is a predator, to the TMZ tapes to how he's treated people on the Epstein files. I mean, the parts of them were released heavily redacted, but parts that weren't redacted were all about the victims. So the victims got exposed. That in itself is repulsive, but we all know why he's not releasing the full Epstein files as he said he would, because Epstein was a really good friend of Donald Trump. Point of this video is not just to highlight how terrible of a human being and how shitty of a president Donald Trump is. It is legitimately a question. The question is, what happens next? What happens next? What happens after Trump is gone? Because there is significant decline. That is obvious from the fact that he's been shitting himself on TV. The recent interviews that he's had, we can see that his speech is significantly slurred. Experts have already weighed in on this and said that he very likely has suffered a stroke in very recent times, which would lead to the speech, the face, and the fact that his arm isn't doing what it used to do, the fact that he's not shaking hands in that childish, petulant way that he used to shake hands. So what happens next? Because the evil people who have been telling him to do some really horrible, evil shit, they're still hanging around. I said this on TikTok a year or two ago. The American empire is gone. But what happens next? For Europe, I sincerely hope that the European leaders have all pulled their thumb out of their asses and have realised that they cannot and should not be relying on America and need to step up their game and actually be adults, rather than just going on the good chap principle that British politics does. A good person wouldn't do this, so we don't need to have any checks and balances for this. We don't need to prepare for that, because a good person wouldn't do that. But there are countless examples of bad people being in politics. Again, Captain Bone Spurs, Donald J. Trump.